Welcome to the Science of Hockey, the podcast where we break down the science behind ice hockey. I'm the analyst, your host, and every week we explore the data, research, and evidence that shape how we play, train, and understand the game of hockey. From biomechanics to performance psychology, we take you beyond the rink and into the research lab, giving you insights that go beyond hearsay and into what really makes the difference on the ice. Whether you're a player, a coach, a parent, or just someone passionate about the sport, we're here to bring you scientifically backed information in a language that's friendly and easy to understand. So grab your skates and let's dive into the science of hockey. Hello, hockey enthusiasts. This is the Science of Hockey, and I'm your host, the analyst. In this episode, we explore how posture and movement patterns influence the health and performance of elite ice hockey players. Join us to uncover key findings and their implications for player development.
Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're lacing up our skates and hitting the ice with some elite hockey players.
Oh, yeah.
But not literally, of course.
Yeah.
We're actually going to be digging into some research from the Journal of Human Kinetics about how these athletes move and how their posture, could be impacting their, pain and injuries down the line.
This is a really cool study, actually, because it goes beyond just, watching them play on the ice.
Right.
It really gets into like their fundamental movement patterns and their spinal posture and things that can have a big impact on, how healthy they are and how long they can stay in the game.
Absolutely. So we're talking 86 elite male players here, all between 18 and 38 years old. So, really at the top of their game. And, we all know you guys like to get to the good stuff. So let's break down what the researchers actually found.
Okay.
They used this tool called the Functional Movement Screen, or the FMSTM, to assess these players. Have you ever heard of this screen before?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's becoming more and more popular, not just in like professional sports, but also in physical therapy and fitness.
Okay.
And it's basically like a set of 7 tests that measure these really basic movement patterns, like squatting, lunging, balancing, that kind of thing.
So kind of like a standardized test for your body's ability to move?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And the idea is that if you've got like limitations in these basic movements, then, it could increase your risk of getting hurt. Think of it like this. If your car's alignment's off, it's going to wear down your tires unevenly, and then you're more likely to have a blowout.
Right.
So the FMSTM kind of helps identify, those alignment issues in your body before they turn into big problems.
That makes total sense. So what did they find when they put these elite hockey players through this FMSTM?
Well, one of the most surprising things was that 28% of the players actually scored below 14 on the screen.
Really?
And that's important because a score under 14 is like a red flag. Could mean potential for injury. So over a quarter of these elite athletes, the peak of their physical abilities are showing movement limitations.
Wow, that's way higher than I would have expected. I mean, these are pro athletes. You'd
Right.
think that they'd be able to, kind of ace a test of basic movements.
Exactly. And that's what makes this research so interesting.
Right.
It really shows that even, the best of the best can still improve when it comes to how they move fundamentally. And it emphasizes how important it is to address these issues early on before, they turn into bigger problems.
Absolutely. So let's get into some of the specifics here. What were some of the movements that these players were struggling with?
So 2 of the tests on the FMSTM where they had the lowest scores were the rotatory stability test and the hurdle step.
Okay.
The rotatory stability test measures how well you can control rotation using your core. So like how well you resist, twisting forces.
Okay.
Imagine you're on your hands and knees and you lift one arm and the opposite leg. Sounds simple, but it really, challenges your core strength and stability.
Yeah, I can see how that would be super important for hockey players with all that twisting and turning they're doing on the ice.
Exactly. And then the hurdle step that involves stepping over a hurdle.
Okay.
Kind of like, a track and field event.
Right.
But it's not about speed. It's about maintaining balance and control as you step over. So this one assesses hip mobility and stability and coordination.
So you got to have those flexible hips and that good balance
Yeah.
and like the coordination to put it all together.
Exactly. What's really interesting is that a lower score on that rotatory stability test was actually linked to shoulder pain in these players.
Wait, so problems with your core stability could be contributing to shoulder pain.
That's what the research suggests.
Wow.
And it really just emphasizes that you can't think about the body as, a bunch of separate parts.
Right.
It's all connected. A weakness in one area can affect everything else. In this case, a weak core might be forcing the shoulder to work harder to compensate, and that can lead to pain and possible injuries.
That's a pretty big deal when you consider shoulder injuries are like one of the most common things in hockey players.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what other, like, seemingly unrelated areas of the body could be contributing to those types of injuries, too.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
It really shows how important a holistic approach is to training and preventing injuries.
Totally. Now, it wasn't just those two tests that these elite players had trouble with.
Right.
They also had a bit of difficulty with the deep squat and the inline lunge. Both of those require really good hip flexibility and stability.
Yeah.
It seems like hip mobility is a big theme here.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is, especially in hockey players?
Well, think about the posture they're in when they're skating. They're constantly in this, crouched position with their hips flexed.
Yeah.
That classic hunched over hockey stance.
Oh, yeah.
And while that might help them on the ice, it can actually lead to some tightness in their hip flexors.
Right.
Those muscles at the front of your hips.
Okay.
And that can limit your ability to fully extend your hips, which is really important for movements like squatting and lunging.
So it's almost like their sport is kind of predisposing them to these movement limitations. It makes you wonder if there's a way to balance the demands of the sport with, the need to have healthy movement patterns.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
It's something that coaches and trainers and, athletes themselves are becoming more and more aware of. There's a growing emphasis on, incorporating mobility and flexibility training into hockey programs.
Yeah.
To try and counteract these postural imbalances and help prevent injuries.
Makes sense. You can't just focus on building strength and power. You got to have that mobility and flexibility to support those movements.
Yeah, for sure.
Which leads us to the other big finding from this study, the link between hockey posture and pain. What can you tell us about that?
Well, as we talked about, hockey players tend to have that very specific posture with the forward lean and the rounded upper back.
Right.
And the study confirmed this. They found that a lot of players had decreased lumbar lordosis, that's the inward curve in your lower back,
Okay.
and increased thoracic kyphosis, the outward curve of your upper back.
So they actually measured these spinal curves and found that the typical hockey posture was, pretty common in these elite players.
Exactly. And what's more, they found a connection between this posture and pain.
Yeah.
80% of the players said they had experienced lower back pain.
80%? That's a crazy high number.
Yeah.
So the research is really backing up what we see, just anecdotally, that this classic hockey player posture is really tough on their bodies.
It's definitely a concern.
Yeah.
And it highlights that, we need to find ways to fix these postural imbalances.
Right.
If we can help these athletes maintain better spinal alignment both on and off the ice, it can really help reduce their risk of pain and injury.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about, what this means for those of us who aren't elite hockey players.
Sure.
And this is super interesting stuff, but I'm not planning on joining the NHL anytime soon.
Right.
So what's the takeaway for, the average person?
Well, I think the cool thing about this research is that it actually applies to everyone, no matter, how athletic you are.
Okay.
First, it shows how important functional movement is. Being able to move your body efficiently and effectively in everyday life. We might not be, making those explosive turns on the ice.
Right.
But we're still asking our bodies to move in all sorts of ways throughout the day.
Yeah, whether it's picking up our kids or carrying groceries or just getting up and down from a chair.
Exactly. And if we have limitations in those, fundamental movements, it can increase our risk of pain and injury.
Just like athletes.
Exactly. So we should all be thinking about how well we move, not just, how much we can lift or how fast we can run.
So we should be focusing on quality of movement over quantity of movement.
Yeah, I like that. And the second big takeaway is, the impact of posture. We've seen how that typical hockey posture can cause problems.
Yeah.
And it's something that affects a lot of people these days.
Yeah.
Especially with all the desk jobs and sitting. They do.
Yeah, we're all glued to our screens, slouching in our chairs for hours.
Right. And that constant slouching can lead to the same kind of postural imbalances that we see in hockey players.
Okay.
That rounded upper back, flattened lower back, tight hip flexors. And just like in hockey players, those imbalances can lead to pain and stiffness and decreased mobility.
So we're all turning into hockey players posture-wise without even realizing it.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
But the good news is we can actually change that.
Okay.
We can make choices to improve our posture and move our bodies in ways that help counteract, those negative effects.
I'm all ears. What kind of things can we do to improve our posture and movement patterns?
So much we can do. I think the first thing is just awareness.
Okay.
We got to start paying attention to how we're holding our bodies all day long. Are we slouching at our desks? Are our shoulders hunched up? Are we looking down at our phones all the time?
Right.
Once we actually start noticing these habits, then we can start to, correct them.
So being mindful of our posture, like catching ourselves when we're slouching and really making an effort to sit up straight.
Exactly.
It's easier said than done, though, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, especially, when we're so used to these postures.
Mm-hmm.
But there are things we can do to help ourselves, like, setting reminders on our phones to check our posture throughout the day.
Oh, that's a good one.
Or using ergonomic tools like a standing desk or laptop stand.
Right.
To encourage that more upright position.
And I imagine strengthening our core muscles could also help support good posture.
Oh, absolutely.
We saw how important that was for the hockey players.
Yeah, a strong core is like an internal brace for your spine.
Okay.
It helps you maintain that proper alignment, and it reduces strain on your back.
So yeah, incorporating some core exercises into our routine could really make a big difference.
For sure. And the good news is you don't need a gym membership or any fancy equipment.
Right.
There are tons of body weight exercises you can do at home.
Like what?
Planks, bird dog, dead bugs. All those are great.
Awesome. Those are all good ones. But what about those tight hips we talked about?
Yeah.
What can we do to loosen those up and improve our hip mobility?
That's a big one, too, because when your hips are tight, it affects everything.
Mm-hmm.
Your posture, your gait,
Yeah.
how you walk, how you move overall.
Right.
It can even lead to pain in your lower back, knees, feet.
Wow.
So yeah, getting some hip stretches and mobility exercises into your routine is really important.
You mentioned yoga earlier. Would that be a good way to improve hip mobility?
Oh, yoga's amazing for that.
Okay.
It's got all these poses that really target those hip flexors, hamstrings, glutes,
Mm-hmm.
all the muscles that can contribute to, tight hips.
Yeah.
Poses like pigeon pose, warrior one, triangle pose. Those are all really good for opening up the hips.
I've heard of those.
And there's so many resources online and yoga classes available if you're looking for some guidance.
Perfect. And I guess it really all comes back to, listening to your body
Mm-hmm.
and finding activities that you enjoy and that make you feel good.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
It shouldn't feel like a chore.
Right.
Find something you look forward to, whether it's yoga, Pilates, dancing, swimming, hiking, even just going for a walk in nature.
Yeah.
The key is to move your body in lots of different ways and to make it a regular thing.
Such great advice. It's not about being perfect or forcing ourselves into these, crazy positions.
Right.
It's about finding that joy in movement and making choices that make us feel good overall.
I love that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights on this research with us.
Of course.
It's been so fascinating, and you've given us so many practical things we can actually apply to our own lives.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
And remember, even small changes can make a big difference over time.
that's true.
So start today and just keep moving.
Wise words. And that wraps up another deep dive. We hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. Until next time, keep exploring.
Thanks for tuning in to the Science of Hockey. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share it with your friends, teammates, or anyone who loves hockey as much as you do. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment to let us know what you liked, what you'd like to hear next, or any questions you have. Your feedback helps us make the show even better. Until next time, keep your skates sharp, your mind open, and keep chasing the science behind the game.